Welcome to episode 169 on the Happiness Happens podcast. I'm your host, Simona, and today we're doing a solo episode with me. You know, I like to keep my solo episodes nice and short, so I hope that this episode is landing exactly where you need it right now, and I hope it's finding you in a time where you might need a little bit of hope and inspiration. We're talking all about, are you waiting for the other shoe to drop? Now, by the time you're listening to this episode, it's been about a month or so since I went on this incredible retreat. When I go on retreats, I never really know what to expect. I kind of set the intention for what I would love to sort of have manifest or what would I love to happen. And then I just kind of let it flow from there because if we're being really honest, there isn't really much that we can control, especially when it comes to a healing journey and especially when it comes to really tapping into our intuition and receiving guidance from spirit. So, I was at this retreat, and before going to this retreat, I was feeling this like inner void. For a while now, I've been kind of feeling like something is missing, and it's been a long time that I've been feeling this way. And honestly, I couldn't really pinpoint it. I don't really know where it came from or why it was happening. And it didn't have anything to do with like money or my business or relationships or anything like that. It really just had to do with me. And I had this massive realization when I was there that ultimately changed everything. And like I was mentioning before, I don't really know what to expect when I go on retreats. Like I set my intention and then I let it flow from there, and I welcome anything that needs to be, healed or cleared out with open arms. And I tend to journal a lot, and I just kind of like sit around and sit with my thoughts and all that kind of stuff. Typically what people do when they're on retreats, right? So the first night that we were there, we were doing this meditation and everything felt completely fine to me. And we did this meditation and it was so beautiful. It was like the first night we were there. We were all just kind of like really sink into the space, into the energy, and into like what did we want to cultivate this weekend with our time together and how do we want to be present with each other while we were there. So totally fine. So I'm in this meditation and then we end the meditation and, we all kind of come back and, you wake up and you kind of come back and you see how you're feeling and you're tapping into your emotions and all of that, right? So I felt fine initially. And then I got this like overwhelming amount of sadness. The person who was leading the entire retreat is my friend Nicole, and she's just like such a safe space for me. Like I feel like I can tell her everything in the world and she just gets it. She's just such an amazing friend. And so to have her leading the retreat makes it like an extra safe space for me. Like I didn't really feel like I needed to like hold back or like hide or anything like that. So it's so important, like just as a caveat, when you're going on a retreat, like you need to make sure that you're with people who you can really be yourself around and like who can hold space for you and you can hold space for them in whatever capacity that looks like, right? So we were all laying there and Nicole said, I got this like overwhelming feeling like someone needs like, like a dose of confidence or like, just like a knowingness that it's all going to be okay. And no one was really reacting. And I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, is this message for me? And I was like, I think it might be for me. And I kind of got this like overwhelming feeling of like fear and sadness, and I actually spoke up into the group, which I don't always do. Like I do like to talk. I think we all know that. I mean, as a podcast host, I love to talk, and just in general I do love to share stories and stuff like that. But when I'm at a retreat, I always try and be mindful of like other people's experiences, other people's journeys, what other people are experiencing as well, because I don't want to like overshadow their energy or what they're experiencing or, whatever. I just want to be really mindful of like everyone else's experiences as well. So I don't always share all of like my emotions with everyone. Like a lot of the time I'll like sort of like turn inwards and like journal it all out and all of that kind of stuff. Now, what I realized in this moment, and someone had said it, it's like, and I can't remember who said it. It might have been Nicole who said it, but it was kind of like someone had said like, you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I was like, oh my God, like what a realization. Like, yes, I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And in life, when you have those moments that shift everything and that like change our lives forever, this was one of those moments for me. This was like the confirmation, the full circle healing that I've been doing for so many months now. It's almost been a year. And just this really like massive dive deep into why I have all of these like deep rooted fears and where they come from. This was that full circle moment for me. And I can precisely count like 4 or 5 moments in my entire life that have been like life changing and life defining. And this was one of them. It was a moment where I really came face to face and kind of like finally came face to face with that deep sadness that I'd been feeling in my heart for a while now. And it was like nothing like debilitating. It wasn't caused by anyone or anything. It didn't feel like depression. Like it just was this kind of like lingering feeling of something always being or feeling wrong. And I realized in this moment that yes, I am in fact always living and waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm always waiting to see what's going to go wrong. I'm always waiting to see what's the next bad thing that's going to happen. Always. And I have to caveat this too. Like, I am not someone who is a pessimist. I'm a very optimistic person. I've always had a very bubbly personality. And so battling with these like internal feelings of fear and sadness and like not enoughness is very difficult for me because I've never really been someone who's had a lot of feelings like that. You know what I mean? And it hasn't really been until like the last few years that I've really felt more of that deeply as things come up to the surface to be healed, right? So I'll share with you all here because I'm finally ready to talk about this. And it's not something that I talk about often with people in general at all. And something that I've actually just put myself in therapy for a really long time because it's like, I can't live like this anymore. But I have this really deep rooted fear of death, of people dying, of my loved ones leaving. And it's not death for myself. Like I am not scared to die. It's like for my loved ones. What does a life look like without them? You know? And in this moment of this meditation, as I was like sitting on the floor, I was laying down and I just had like tears rolling down my face. And I don't even really remember why, because I wasn't sad. I think I was feeling affirmed. Like I was feeling like valid. I was feeling validated. I was feeling, validated in my emotions, validated in what I was experiencing. And I knew in this moment that this is where it was going to change. And it was in this moment that I realized that I live every single day grieving through the potential loss of my husband, my loved ones, my friends, my family, even though they're still alive. Just let that sink in. I have been, for all of the years of my life, foreshadowing the things that I know are going to happen one day and living my life in anticipation of that day. But how do we live a peaceful life always in anticipation of something bad happening? You can't. You're always in this fight or flight type of feeling. I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was always waiting for the bad thing to happen, even though there was no reason for the bad thing to happen, even though there was no indicator in my life of the bad thing wanting or, potentially happening. I realized this in this moment. When we live in anticipation of bad things happening all the time, and this is something that I've learned, especially over that retreat weekend and have adopted more into my life ever since, but when we live in anticipation of all these bad things happening, this is where we get anxiety. This is where we get illness. This is where we get dis-ease. This is where we get fear and anger and frustration and overwhelm. And this is why we get feelings of not enoughness, is when we're waiting for that bad thing to happen. We're waiting for that next thing that's going to take us back off of our happiness, back out of our joy of our life and out of our living, and waiting for that moment that's going to sort of change everything, if you will. I was realizing that this is exactly why, like, I live my life every single day feeling like it's never enough. It doesn't matter how many clients I have, how much money I make, how many, friends I have, like what my romantic life looks like nothing. It just never feels like enough. But not because it's not enough, because it is enough. It's just that when you're constantly living in like a state of fight or flight, when you're constantly living, waiting for that next bad thing to happen, you can't possibly be grateful for what you have, right? And so I was living in the future. I was living in the what ifs. And I realized in this moment that all this does is take away our presence from the right here and right now. It takes away our belief, it takes away our hope, it takes away our joy, and it ultimately takes away our happiness. So, what I've learned through this entire experience is that it's okay to feel like this. It's okay sometimes to feel like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And it's okay sometimes to anticipate that bad things are going to happen because we do know that they will. But I've also learned that if you're constantly living in fear, or if you're constantly waiting for something bad to happen, you really can't meet yourself where you're at. You're like taking off before you even land. You just can't. You can't live like that. So I got to asking myself that whole weekend, how do we shift through this, right? And what came through and what I journaled out was that we come through this by feeling our emotions fully, by taking the actual amount of time that it takes to process those emotions, to live through them, and to really transmute that and to take that feeling and that fear and validate it and allow it to live for what it is because it's there for a reason. If we don't honor and acknowledge everything that we feel, we bury things deep down inside. We bury things to the point where they don't have the opportunity or the possibility to come up for even a potential or possibility to be healed. How do we shift through this? We do it by honoring what you feel and why you feel it. We do it by giving a voice and understanding to the scary things that we inevitably know will take place one day in our lives. And we have to let all of these feelings come to the surface and be transmuted into that light energy. We need to let presence expand that energy into something beautiful and something that we can actually take and move forward with in our lives. Let's let the inevitable stay where it is and be here now. So, I want this episode today to be your permission slip in case you've ever felt this way too. You're not alone in how you feel. It's not weird to feel sad about things that haven't happened yet, and it's normal. And we all have fears, and sometimes they're really hard to explain, and sometimes we don't really understand why they're happening. It's why we do energy work, right? It's why we do healing work. It's why we journal. It's why we meditate. It's why we learn. It's why we grow. And it's why we expand. And it's how we expand. When we take our power back from what is trying to keep us safe, we get to stand in our purpose. So I'll leave you on this note today. When we take our power back from what is trying to keep us safe, we get to stand in our purpose. I hope you have an absolutely beautiful day ahead. I hope this episode found you exactly where you needed it, and I hope that you share it with someone that you know needs to hear this message as well. Remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.